Hello, and welcome to a special little review. Doing this one a little bit differently. My name is Ben. I'm joined by Dan,
Hello.
and we are going to discuss The Last of Us 2. Normally, we would do this just one of us, but we managed to both coincidentally finish the game at the same rough time.
Same day, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think he was literally a couple of hours after me.
Yeah, all right. We're in a race.
I'm just saying, I was at work, and But anyway, so yeah, we thought we'd do something a little bit differently because The Last of Us 2 has been quite a impactful game, I guess, regardless of how you look at it. It's
polarizing.
Yes, it's been very divisive.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll get it off to the start, and I'll just say, for full transparency, I am a massive Last of Us fan. Last of Us, the first one, is like my second favorite game of all time, and I
What's the
absolutely
first? I'm really curious. Oh, Metal Gear Solid.
yeah.
Okay.
As I say, I absolutely love this franchise. So I am doing my best to look at it with as little bias as possible, and I feel like I'm quite good at taking bias away when I review stuff, for the most part.
Yeah, I'm with you. It is one of my top franchises. I realized after picking up the second one that I actually have 4 copies of the first game. I have the PS4 version, the PS3 version, and both the collector's editions with Ellie and Joel on the front. So it's fair to say that I'm a fan as well. But I agree. I've tried to look at it as a game in its own right, rather than putting it on a pedestal before I've even played it.
Yeah. All right. So you go first, Dan. What did you think of the game's story?
So for everyone out there, we have put some kind of guide questions that we're going to go through. So story, I really liked the story. I thought the story was really well put together. I mean, how can I try to avoid the spoilies? I feel that in the first game, it was such an epic story of them traveling across the country. So anyone, just to sum up the story quickly, basically it follows on 5 years after the first game, and basically in the first game you traveled across the country to try and for reasons, and you kind of made a lot of people unhappy along the way, but it's never really brought up. And the second game is kind of what happens if some of those unhappy people catch up with you. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, it's like it's almost as if the first game foreshadows the second one. Like, it's the culmination of everything that happened on that cross-country journey all coming to a head to create the story of the second game.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I mean, if you look at it as, Ellie and Joel murdered a lot of people.
There's a big pockety count, yeah.
In their journey, and some of those people are going to have, friends, family, they're part of groups, they're part of gangs, they're part of whatever. You're gonna piss some people off.
Yeah.
And this game is very clever because it not only continues the story of Ellie and Joel, but you also it forces you to look at it from a different perspective, and you actually look at it from the perspective of some of those people you've pissed off.
Yeah.
Which you would think, considering you've played so long as Joel and Ellie, that you would automatically hate anyone that they're against. But the game is very good at making you see multiple perspectives.
Yeah, I have to agree. I really, really enjoyed the story of this game. I'll be honest, at first, during my first sort of, I want to say like 7 or 8 hours of the game, I was honestly a little bit worried about the story because I didn't know where it was going to go. But so, as Dan alluded to, in this game, you play as two different characters. There are two different storylines that you follow, and they interweave and mingle in a variety of ways that you explore across the game. And
I think it's fair to say you basically you play half the game as the person that Ellie. You play half the game as Ellie. I mean, that's no spoiler. And you play half the game as the person you perceive to be the bad guy, but it's not as black and white as it seems. And I thought that was a very clever way of doing it, rather than just
it was
rehashing.
Yeah, so that was my worry. My worry was at first that, oh, okay, right, it's another cross-country game. Like, we're going to Seattle and we're going to go, do whatever. But then when the story started to branch off and I started to see the other side of it, it honestly caused like quite a lot of like internal conflict in a way, because this game, like, ultimately the story is a story of revenge. That's the whole kind of overarching theme, but it's more than that. Like, it's also a sort of a lesson in how you can be blinded by revenge, and you can let revenge just dominate everything you're doing, and the consequences that can have, and the whole, there's two sides to every story. So it was a journey. That's the only way I can describe it, really.
Yeah, both literally and figuratively. But yeah, I'm with you there. So the only thing I can compare it to, because Ben will know this because when we were talking about it before, but is I can kind of compare it to The Walking Dead in terms of the similar apocalypse level event, and the things that have been the zombies or whatever you want to call them aren't the biggest threat. The biggest threat of people. It has a lot of similar themes to The Walking Dead, and part of the reason I stopped reading those comics is it always felt like it was a big epic journey to get somewhere that was going to solve all their problems, and then when they got there, something went wrong, and then it was another big epic journey to go somewhere that solved all their problems, and rinse and repeat. That's how it felt, and I got a bit tired of that. And like Ben said, I was a bit worried that this was going to be another, right, okay, let's find an excuse for the characters to travel halfway across the country and have some big thing at the end. But it's not really, it doesn't play out like that, which I was impressed with. So yeah, I really enjoyed the story. I understand why people are upset. Again, no spoilers, but I think it did very well of showing actions have consequences, whether you think you've done the right thing or not. And it's that kind of whole, everyone's the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
Not everybody will agree with the decisions that you've made, and sometimes you're going to have to, deal with people that don't agree with things you've done. And I think the game does that very well, even though I do get why people were upset.
It's it's one of those things that's just always going to divide people. So what about the gameplay of the game itself? What did you think of that?
I really liked it. It's I think it's fair to say it's more of the same.
Mm.
There isn't anything hugely different in the way that the first one plays, but I feel like the environments were bigger. There was some kind of almost open world sections where you got to choose your path a little bit more, whereas the first one was very linear.
Yeah, there was a lot of blocked doors and dead end alleys and
Yeah,
that kind of
so
stuff.
I feel like the first one, you would have like one floor of a building would be the section, whereas in this game it's like half a city
Yeah.
at times, which I thought was really good. And I really felt like I really did feel like a scavenger in this one.
Yeah, resources were somewhat harder to come by. I feel like in the first one, I played them both on like normal difficulty, and I feel like in the first one I struggled more with like ammo and medkits. No, in this one I struggled more. Sorry, in the second
Yeah,
one it was harder to come by, so the decisions were harder. You know, it's like, well, I really could do with that silencer, but at the same point, am I gonna need a medkit?
yeah, I agree with you, and I feel like the first one you got given a bow pretty early on and could just easily craft arrows for it. Whereas in this one, you have a few weapons, but they're loud. They're guns mostly, and it's much more about the sneaking and the um, the strategizing what you're going to do in an area. Whereas in the first one, I found, especially kind of as soon as you got the bow, you could literally just walk in, headshot everything, pick your arrows back up. Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
felt very kind of simplistic. Whereas this one, I thought the AI was very clever in this one as well.
it was definitely an improvement on the first one. I agree in that the tried and tested method hasn't changed, and I'm glad it hasn't. Um, but yeah, there was definitely some smaller differences in the gameplay. My favorite thing to come out of it was the environmental storytelling. And that isn't really a new thing. I feel like that was done in The Last of Us 1 as well, but it's taken to a new level in the second one, because most of the second one happens in the same area. You've got these two factions fighting over turf. And so there's a lot of not only finding things that happened before Outbreak Day, but finding notes from people to friends and fellow soldiers and seeing the behind the scenes of these two factions.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, they've always been good at telling a story without explicitly telling you.
Yeah.
And I think that they did that very well. The for anyone wondering, it's very similar. The storytelling is also quite similar to the first one, where you picked up a lot of what was going on just from Joel and Ellie chatting as they were traveling. And in this one, you're often with a partner, and a lot of the things you pick up is either you and your partner just talking as you're going through the game, or sometimes listening to the enemies,
Yeah. There
like
was a lot of eavesdropping and stuff.
hearing them chat gives you. They're all like you said, Ben, with the environment mixed with kind of the background chatter and everything. It all kind of comes together to give you a picture of the story without making you sit and watch
Yeah, it's like,
the cutscene.
yeah, you have this overall story, but then there's also like the story of Seattle and what happened in that city and is still happening.
Mm.
So that was nice to pick up on. Yeah, but honestly, gameplay wise, I can't really fault it. If you're looking for something completely new to the first one, you're not going to get that, because this is just tried and tested and improved on from the first one, I would say.
Yeah, I. It's very fluid. It's very smooth. It's very fun. Um,
It's very
and,
graphic. Not
oh
in,
god, it's brutal.
not in terms of like the amount of blood or anything, but the actual brutality of, you know, swinging an axe into somebody's chest and the sound it makes. And oh my god, can we just talk about when you kill a human, their friends crying out their name?
Yeah, it. Yeah, that's
Like
it.
you kill someone and they're like, Owen, and you're like, oh man, yeah, shit, that's Owen. He probably had like a girlfriend, or you might have had a kid. And, oh god,
Or they'll be talking about their wife and kid, and you know that you're going to have to kill those people to get.
yeah. There's no way through other than to dispose of them. Like,
Well, I mean, I didn't try massively hard not to kill everyone. I'm not going to lie, but there's most of the time you're going to have to kill everything in the area to get from one place to the next. And, you know, two characters are just stood there kind of having a chat before their patrol, talking about what's going on at home. And you're thinking, oh my God, I'm really, yeah. There's, I feel like you probably fight more humans than you do infected in this one. And they've really made sure that the humans are kind of not just fodder, that you feel for them, you feel like they're actually characters rather than just.
yeah, even just ones that are like, oh, you know, I've been on patrol for 3 months now. I can't wait to get home and see everyone. And you're like, oh crap, don't.
Yeah. Sorry.
All
But
right.
yeah, I think you're right with that. I mean, I feel like we've not really talked about the gameplay, but it is very much the same.
Honest, yeah, I can't really see much else to say, to be honest.
I mean, the environments are better. You can lay prone, and there's different levels of grass. There's different places you can hide. You can crawl under things. You can crawl over things. You can hide in things.
Yeah, that's
There's a lot,
true. Yeah.
there's a lot more kind of um, there's a lot more room to strategize. Like I feel like sometimes with the first one, you'll see certain environmental keys, like it wants you to do it in a certain way. You know, push this
Yeah,
person.
it's again that open world element, though, isn't it? In the second one.
Yeah, there's a lot more. And if in doubt, you can just sprint away from a section and let it kind of settle down and come back to it later.
Yeah, I completely forgot that. That was, yeah, that's a big point actually. Lots of like the amount of times I went prone and went under like a car or some crap to try and avoid somebody.
Or when they're, because especially with the infected, when you see like a narrow gap that you can squeeze through, and you know that it's going to give you like a couple of seconds of respite before they come smashing through the wall,
Yeah, exactly.
and just things like that. Yeah, it's just kind of the first game, but better done.
Yeah.
You know, they've made use of the technology and they've really improved on every area, if I had to say.
Okay, well, talking about making use of technology, this game has to be the most visually beautiful game that I've played this generation.
Yeah, I would.
If not the most, it's definitely up there. Like, not
I mean,
just. I was talking to you about this the other day. Like, not just the actual environments and the way that everything's created, but the small details. You know, when you're in a spore area, the flashlight going through the spores and having that particle effect. Just all of the small details have been addressed in terms of how a city would look post outbreak.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the thing with graphics now is they've come so far that it's almost, what can we do? What else can we do? You know, I mean, the Resident Evil remakes are phenomenal. Death Stranding was amazing. The Last of Us 2 is, I mean, I feel like I say, oh, it's one of the most beautiful games I've ever played a lot because with each new release, they seem to be raising the bar. So it is beautiful in terms of those other games, but it, like Ben said, it's the attention to detail. Like every packet in a cupboard will have labels on, and like you say, the dust particles, and I mean, I'm a bit of a stickler for screenshots going into photo mode, and that when you add a photo mode to a game, you can't hide anything,
Oh yeah, no.
and every photo I took was absolutely stunning. The effects, like if you kill someone in the snow, the blood slowly going into the snow, and yeah, it is amazing. There's no other way of putting it, really.
Yeah, I when I'm reviewing a game, if I'm talking about a game's, that's why I try and talk about games like visuals rather than its graphics, because it's almost commonplace that a game like a AAA blockbuster like this will be graphically better than a game that came out last year. It's almost expected. So I do try and kind of look at those smaller things, those attentions to detail.
Yeah.
And I can't fault this game. I really can't. I've never. I'm very hard pressed to think of an example with this level of detail.
Yeah, I agree. And it's very good at it switches the environments up as well. So you kind of there's snowy areas that you start in, kind of mountainous snowy areas. There's overgrown cities. There's dusty kind of arid, dry towns that have seen no rain for a long time. There's villages. You go through one point. There's a I don't want to ruin it, but there's lots of fire at one point, which looks phenomenal as well. Like it's not just one. Like as much as I love the first game, in my memory, it's all kind of overgrown cities. That's the only thing I really remember from it.
Yeah, it's kind of all it was really, was a lot of cities taken over by nature.
Whereas this one, do you agree that there's lots of kind of environments like flooded? There's a lot of flooded sections as well.
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, the bit with the fire was just like, I literally had to sort of pick my jaw up.
Yeah, same.
Just because, like, just everything, the buildings sort of crumbling, and just literally everything. I was just like, wow, okay.
The ash in the air and
yeah, it's something unreal.
I think the character animations were amazing as well. Like whenever you went into photo mode, the character would be pulling a different face depending on what situation it was.
Oh yeah. I didn't mess around with the photo mode as much as you did.
I couldn't help it. I took a few and it was so pretty, and then I took more, and now I've got about.
You're
80.
A sucker for photo mode, man.
I can't help it.
Okay, so next up we've got opinions of the game's audio. I can't really fault it. I don't really like. I mean, I don't know how to explain the audio of the game.
I think we've already kind of covered it with the kind of the visceral sounds you get when you kill someone, and the chatter, the talking that you hear, and
it's a level of attention to detail. Even like when you hit somebody with an axe, it isn't just a thump. You might hear like a bone break, and you'll hear the blood, and you literally hear every single thing that is happening.
Which sounds like we're being really kind of gross and over the top, but it's hard to explain. It's like Like I've shot a zombie in the new Resident Evil and blown their head up, and it doesn't feel as brutal as just getting someone in a chokehold until they pass out on this one, for example, because everything's so realistic in the way it plays out. It really does make you feel like you're impacting these people or infected, or even you. Because, I mean, God, they don't have to take some hits throughout the game.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you can see them mounting up. Like, as the game goes on, the characters get more battered and bruised and injured. And
yeah, literally.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, again, it's... In terms of audio, it does what a AAA blockbuster should. But it's that extra little attention to detail pushing it over the top for me.
It's raising the bar a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, right. So we got to be careful how we talk about these next couple of 2 questions. So obviously we mentioned it beforehand that there's a new character in the game. How did you feel about that? Having this new character?
Well, I tend not to read the internet because people are awful. But me and you had a chat, didn't we, Ben? People didn't like the addition of a new character because they felt that the character was, what was the phrase you used? Shoehorned in.
Yeah, that was what I got told, basically.
And I get where they're coming from in terms of why. I get why people are saying that, because it isn't a character that is in the first game.
Yeah.
So people are always going to be like, oh, you've just made him up and added him in. But the person's story runs deep into the first game. You might not have seen, you might not have seen that character, but they are important, and they, well, not that they're important, but they were in.
This right, okay. This is what the second game is trying to tell you, is that, you know, think of it like the first game is kind of tunnel visioned. Joel and Ellie are on a mission and they want to succeed. And then the second game is getting you to realize that there was all of these things outside of that tunnel. There were people that were affected by the actions of Joel and Ellie. And I personally think a lot of people who are basing their opinion of this on the spoilers that came out, you're not getting that full story. You know, you're seeing small snippets of the puzzle. You're not seeing all of the pieces. And when all of the pieces come together, it does create this big picture. And you see that this character has a reason to be in this game. This character was, like Dan said, she there from the get-go in the background of the first game.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like in the first game, you play as these 2 characters, and they're all you know. All you know is these 2 characters. The game makes you fall in love with them because they're very well-rounded and well-put-together characters. And all you care about is getting those 2 characters from A to B in order to fulfill what they're trying to do, and you don't care about anything else. And like I said earlier, it's the second game is all about, well, as Ben said as well, how the stuff you did in the first game affected other people. So this character might not have been shown, but what Ellie and Joel did in the first game completely, you know, changed this character's life, and they really do have a reason to be in this game.
I would say, if anything, as weird as this is going to sound, it's almost as if Joel and Ellie were shoehorned into her life instead of her being shoehorned into theirs. Like, Joel and Ellie kind of forced themselves to be a part of her story.
You could argue that way. You could, yeah. That's a fair argument.
But okay, so this character,
I think the characters themselves, regardless of whether you like them or not, everyone is so well rounded, and you really kind of like, there are some characters that you don't get a great deal of time with, but you still end up feeling really invested. Like, you care about these characters. In some cases, you want to know their story is going to end well, even though you know that it doesn't, or you know that it can't, because when you're playing as two opposing characters, you know, not everyone's going to win, and it kind of tears you up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's oh god, it's so hard to talk about without spoilers. This game would have been impossible without the new character. I can't imagine a Last of Us 2 without the new character and without the way that she was portrayed and her story.
Yeah, I mean, I read a thing the other day, and it was I think it was the director of the game.
Neil Druckmann.
Yeah, I think it was. Basically, was asked, will there be a third one? And the question was kind of, we only make the games if we've got an emotional story that we can tell. And you needed a new character, you needed a new spin in order to care about this game. I don't think I'd have cared as much if it was just another game where Joel and Ellie have to get from A to B.
Yeah.
You know, it needed to be different. It needed to change things. It needed to make me care, and it did. And it made me angry at times, and happy and sad and bittersweet. And any game that can make you feel a massive range of emotions can't have done it wrong, surely.
Well, yeah, there's not much else to say, really. Okay, so let's talk about character development then, because the next question we've got on here is, how do we feel about the character's development? And that is not just our new character, that's all of the characters in the game in general, I guess.
What do you think? Let you go first on this one.
Man, how do I say this? I feel like the development of the characters was I liked it. I liked the way it was done. So I would argue that some characters develop and some characters don't.
Maybe don't develop as much. I think everyone develops a bit.
Everyone develops a bit, but I would say there are characters that develop more than others, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it is. Oh god, it's all tied to the story, and how do you explain it?
I think part of the problem of why some people were a little bit disappointed in this one is, the problem with character development is not every character is going to develop the way you want them to.
Yeah.
And sometimes characters aren't quite who you think they are, and sometimes characters develop and become, I mean, I'm not saying, again, this isn't specific to The Last of Us, but sometimes they develop and become people that you don't like very much.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily, not everyone becomes a good person. And I'm not saying this isn't a spoiler for the game, but I think everyone's kind of got this. Oh, you've got these lovely characters. You've got Joel and Ellie, and she's a young, I think she's about 13, 14 in the first one, and Joel's kind of this dad figure, and then in the second one, it's 5 years later. You don't know really everything that's happened in those 5 years, but in an apocalypse, they won't have been particularly easy. And people harden, people change, people become different. And I think partly that's what people are a bit, they're not as happy with where some of the characters have ended up, but that's such is life.
I guess I shouldn't say that they don't develop as much. I think it is more that there was a character that developed in a way that I was disappointed to see.
Yeah, it makes you want to scream at the TV. Why are you doing that? Why are you making these decisions? Please stop.
Yeah,
but you can't control.
Yeah,
you can't control the way that.
that's another good point of the story, is like you're kind of, you're watching it with this like unbiased opinion almost. It starts off biased, but then you kind of see the other side, and you learn to look at it from both sides, and you're watching both sides play out, and you're watching what's changing, and you just have to kind of just roll with it.
I mean, it shows you care about the characters because you want things to turn out right for them. But I mean, I suppose it's the same as when people are watching soaps or movies, and there's two characters that just should be together, and they keep making the bad choices, and you scream at the TV, no, why? You should. It's blatant. You should be together, but they can't see it. It's that kind of similar. You're watching someone else's story, and they might not make the decisions that you want them to make, but there's nothing you can do about it. You've just kind of got to deal with it. And I think it's a very grown-up way of storytelling. I think it's a very good way of storytelling, but not everyone will get that.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say, I feel like that's why it's such a polarizing thing, because of this. I feel like a lot of people went into it, and even early on, I was making assumptions about where the game's plot was going to go. And then obviously situations happen, characters develop, their friendships develop, and you start to see this new way. And I was personally, I don't want to say I was happy with the new way that things developed, but from a storytelling perspective and from a video game perspective, I loved it.
Yeah, same. I can't remember the last time a game really had me that invested in the story that I just had to know what happened.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep playing, not because, just one more go because it's great fun, but because I really needed to know what happened with these characters. I needed to know how this story was going to end up.
Yeah, I mean, like, to put it into like sort of perspective, I got the game the day it came out. It got delivered to me, and then I completed it the following Friday. So it took me a week to do. It took me about 22, 23 hours to play it roughly, and it full on consumed every single minute of spare time I had for that week. Like, I work nights. I work 4 nights a week. So I wake up late in the day, and I'll wake up, say, 2:00 in the afternoon, and then I'll go to work about 8 p.m. But I found myself like, no, I'm going to wake up at 12 just to get those 2 extra hours before I go to work, because I just have to know how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't start it straight away on release, but when I did start it, I think
Well, I
think
mean,
it took me
you
about
caught me up in like 3 days. I think I was like 10 hours in, and about 3 days later, you were like, "Yeah, I'm 14 hours in," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, same."
well, it took me probably 23 or 24 hours, and I did that fully in. It took me about 3 days from putting it in to finishing it, and that wasn't because any other reason than I just really, really wanted to play it. Also lockdown, but yeah, I had to know where it went, and I think that's a testament to good storytelling and just a good game in general, really.
Alrighty, so final verdict. If you had to score it, what are you scoring it?
Are we going for our normal games bulletin scoring of percentage?
Let's just give it out of 10.
Okay. It's got to be a 10. I can't.
It has to be, right?
I mean, I've only ever given 2 other 10s out, and that was Zelda Breath of the Wild and God of War, because I couldn't fault them, and I can't fault this.
Yeah, I've personally only ever given 10 out of 10, and that was to Persona 5 Royal. But I have to agree that this is like a full-on masterpiece. Not just how can I explain it? Not just because of the story of the game and all of the attention to detail that we were talking about, but I also have to give it credit for listening to feedback from the first game and implementing the improvements that people were looking for. You know, there was a lot of stuff in the first game that people had accepted as flaws, but still thought the game was a masterpiece, you know, mainly around the stealth mechanics and, you know, like enemy AI. And
partly the fact that it was quite linear and quite samey.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, they had this brilliant idea for a brilliant story, and they listened to what people said, and like, what else can you really want from a video game studio?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, even if you took the franchise away and took the Last of Us name on it and just played it as a standalone thing, I mean, firstly, you could play it. It does give you enough insight into the first game that you could play it without playing the first one.
Yeah.
And also, just as a game from start to finish, it is an amazing experience, regardless of whether you're into the franchise and the story or not. It's so much fun. It's intense. It's got some really amazing sequences. Yeah, just can't fault it.
Yeah, I can't. I'm labeling it as a masterpiece personally. And
I think if we're giving it 10s, that's goes without saying.
Yeah, it has to be. No, yeah, I guess, yeah. But I don't want to say that there aren't going to be people who play this game, and I feel like the story is going to be the divisive part. Just because of, like we said, about the progression and people not necessarily agreeing with the steps that get taken. But
yeah, possibly. But I mean, we're looking at it as an unbiased, or trying to look at it as an unbiased opinion and rating it as a gaming experience. And
that's what I mean. I mean, like, as a gaming experience, you can't fault it. And what I was trying to say was, you know, even if you've heard things about the game and if you have these preconceptions of the game, to understand that you're not getting the full picture, the full story, and there's much more to it, and it's much more complex than just what you've seen.
Don't believe the internet.
Yeah, just give the game a chance. And yeah, I guarantee you'll like it. I can't imagine anybody not liking this game. The one conversation I had with somebody who didn't like the game hasn't played the game and is basing everything they saw off of spoilers online.
Oh God, frustrating. I do think there's one thing to add though, that I enjoyed the first one so much I almost forgot that at its core it's a survival horror. And just be aware of the genre going in, because it is brutal. It really is brutal. These characters, whether they're good or bad, the enemies or yourself, are fighting for survival, and you feel it. And it's not for the faint-hearted in places.
Yeah. I don't think there's much else we can say.
No, neither do I.
No, get the game.
Yes, buy it now.